from UnrealTek.net here. Today I'm going to show you how to create a nice clean chat setup that can be added to any widget, whether it be a main HUD or an in-game lobby and so on. So we'll go over some ways to make it very clean and bug-proof, and it will be fully replicated so that it will work in any of your multiplayer games. So pull up a copy of Unreal Engine or some popcorn. Remember our motto, create your way, and let's get to it. I've created a third-person template project. However, as I add more networking ideas, we might have to combine some of these projects to create a full networking template. Anyways, first of all, I've just simply created a blueprints and UI folder and maps and put everything else in my template assets folder. Let's get the widget design out of the way first in our UI folder. So let's create a new folder called Chatbox, and I'm going to set this to green. And let's right click, user interface, widget blueprint, and use the standard w underscore for widget blueprint prefix, and I'm going to call this chat main. Let's open this up. So in this, we're going to want to delete our canvas panel, and let's open up let's open up panel, and primitive, and let's drop a vertical box into chat main. Before I get too far, let's go ahead and set up a size for our chat box to kind of get a preview of what it's going to look at. So I'll hit fill screen here and select custom. Let's choose a width of, say, something like 768 with a height of, say, 256. I think that's a pretty good chat box size, and of course that could always be adjusted. So our vertical box is perfectly fine on its own. And then let's add a size box into it. And in this size box, we want to set it to fill, a full 1.0, and we want to set it to vertically align at the bottom, and this is going to be where our messages are held. So we can even call this size box chat messages if we wanted. And I believe everything should be fine on its own. We can give it a max desired height. We could say we want it to be no higher than our total height of our box minus the chat input. So let's say our chat input will be 64 pixels, so that would be 256 minus 64 would give us 192. So let's say the max height would be 192. I think that should work. And then on top of the size box, let's add an overlay so we can stack some widgets up on top here. And the overlay settings should be fine on their own. However, on top of the overlay, let's first add an image. Where are you? Image. There you are, image. And on top of that, we want to add a scroll box. And the scroll box is going to be our actual, scroll boxes work as a container. So I'm going to call this scroll box message container. And we want that to be a variable. We also want it to be set to horizontally and vertically align fill. And we don't want a scroll bar visible because it's going to automatically remove messages, so we're going to set it to collapsed. We want it to be vertical, everything should be fine. Visibility should be hit test visible, or invisible, sorry, so it's visible, but the cursor can't do anything to it. And in the style, let's go to the top and bottom shadows and let's clear them. So we want to set the tint to 0 alpha and draw as none. draw as none, and alpha 0, and that should, if we collapse these, yeah, there we go. So we have our shadows just like that. Next up, we are gonna set up this image. This will be our chat BG background image, and it doesn't need to be a variable. We want it to be horizontally and vertically aligned, filled as well. And we want it to be hit test invisible as well, because we don't want it to be able to be interacted by with the user, but we want it to be visible. So I'm going to show you a pretty cool little UI thing you can do with this here. First of all, I realized I don't have my project settings set up beforehand. I keep, editor settings set up beforehand. We don't want friendly, we don't want any new window. I always forget that. There we go. Alrighty, so I'll show you a cool thing you can do. So we are gonna assign this a brush, but we are gonna actually create it not as an image, but rather a material. So let's create a new folder called materials. I'm gonna set that to red since we'll only use it once. And let's create a new folder called chatbox. I'm going to set this to orange, and let's create a new material, and let's call this m underscore chatbg. Yeah, that'll be fine. So there's some cool built-in functions in the engine that you can use. I believe you have to turn on the engine content, so go to your content browser, down at view options, just hit show engine content, or sorry, show engine content, not plugin, and you'll see it creates these two folders, engine content and engine C++ classes, and so that allows it to be used, and there's all sorts of neat stuff in there. So we want a material function call, and that function is band, a generated band. And so as you can see, it procedurally generates a horizontal band from the default texture coordinates. So let's give it a width with a 1 vector. So just hold down the 1 key and left mouse click. Let's give it a width of say 0.5. Let's do the same thing. Let's give it a sharpness of 0. We want it to be very unsharp. We can set it to a plain preview too. Well, I don't know if we'll see much. And then after that, we want to do a 1 minus x, like so. And then we want to exponent it, so power. And this will be the base. And the exponent is going to be 5. You could just plug a 1 constant with 5 into there if you wanted. Same deal. And then we want to multiply. And we want to take this into well, first of all, we need to create a 3 vector, just pure black, like so. And we need to change our material. So just click anywhere in the material graph and change your material domain to user interface. And we need it to be translucent. We don't want, we want to be able to see through our chat box. So we want to multiply, that multiply value goes into opacity, and final color goes into here, just like so. And next up, we want to duplicate our generated band, and that is what goes into B. So we'll organize this a little bit. There we go. And in this generated band, we want to take in a static bool, and we want to set it to true for direction switch. And then we want 3 more constants, 1 vectors. The first one is going to be 0.5. The next one is going to be -1. And the next one is going to be 0. So 0 goes into compare, -1 goes into sharpness, and 0.5 goes into width, just the same as up there. So we are not going to see a heck of a lot yet, but if we save that, go back to our chat and select that chat BG. There we have it. We have ourselves a little gradient, and you can see it just barely in the preview there, and you can just barely see it in here. So you can play with those values if you want, especially the opacity. You can play with the values to get a different result. The exponent, for example, if you went to 1, save it quick, you're gonna get a lot different of a value at the beginning than at the end. So you can play with it and decide what you like the best. It's a pretty simple material. So the opacity will be obviously the background, and this vector 3 will be what you would see as a gradient. So if I was to save this as pure red, or nearly pure red, you can see it's a nice red gradient, bottom and top, or side, left to right and top to bottom. But we don't want red, we want a nice black, so it's just barely visible. So we'll save that one last time, but just to show you how that kind of works. So we can close that off. So next, we've got that. We set up the style for that. So I guess that means that in the vertical box, we need another size box, like so. Yes, yes, yes. We want that to be set to vertically aligned bottom as well, so that it stays down there. And its height is gonna be the difference we decided on, which would be 64 pixels. No, that's way too much. Well, 32, I would say. There we go. So just like so. So that'll be its height at all times, because we don't want the size of the actual input box to change. And that's it for the moment, so we'll compile and save that. However, we need to create the actual input portion. Working modularly with widgets is very efficient. It's like working modularly with blueprints with inheritance. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. By doing this, it allows us to change one thing and not have to go back and change a bunch of stuff here. So what I mean by that is we're going to create a new user interface widget blueprint called w underscore we'll say chat in. And so this will be a separate widget. If we compile and saved it, you'll see that we can now add it. So we go to user created and we add it into the size box. Now at the moment, you're obviously not going to see anything, but once we set this up, we will. So in this one, let's set our size to custom again, and let's use the same values, 768 with a height of 32. Just like we set up in the other widget. My details is all messed up. I have to save that layout. So we're gonna get rid of the canvas panel, and what we're gonna do is add let's go to panels, a horizontal box, because obviously you're working horizontally when you're typing, and we want an overlay, which we want to align to the left. because obviously you're typing from the left. And on top of that overlay, we want text, which you might guess what it might do. And we want that to horizontally align fill and vertically align fill. And we want a little bit of padding on the left. Let's say maybe 4 pixels. I think that'll work just fine. And we can have it say chat with space if you prefer. And be nice to have a different font, but maybe Roboto Tiny. Yeah, that might look better. And let's make it quite a bit smaller since we're working with 32 pixels. 24 is quite big. Maybe something like 16. Yeah, I'm sure that'll work. We'll see what it looks like here when we finish. We want it to be slightly opaque. Again, we don't want to totally have our players have it in their face at all times. And we could set this up to a toggle so that when you are chatting it becomes fully opaque. So yeah, let's maybe go like 0.33. I think that'll work pretty good. Could even go a touch higher maybe. Again, we'll see what it looks like. And after that, we want an image on our overlay. Overlay the text on top of an image. And so the text chat is basically just going to be like our input text, I guess you could call it. And the image would be the input text background. And it will be set to horizontally align fill and vertically align center, which I should have set on the text as well, I think. Yes, so this one we are going to set to a very, very, very translucent, like 0.05, 0.075. I like that, yeah. 0.075, I think. And I've totally got this wrong. The color and opacity should be left at full opaque, and it's the tint rather that we want. There we go, that's a lot better. So after that, very simply, in the horizontal box, we just want a text box. You can see it allows input. So add that into the horizontal box, and I guess we should have called this input. So we'll just call it input text box, I guess. And we do want it to be a variable, and we want to set it to fill the whole thing, obviously, to allow typing in there. And we want it to be vertically aligned center. We want no padding, I guess that's the stock. And then style, we don't want that white crap there, obviously. So we need to play with this a little bit. So background image, let's set this up to be tint of, oh, I don't know, something, I guess we could go the same as this one, 0.075. And it's gonna have, I don't even know the names of these all. So we got normal, hovered, focused, read only. So we need to change all of those to the same value, basically. So we'll just collapse that one. Let's just, well, we'll just go one at a time. So this was 0.075. I'm just gonna copy that. I could just copy the hex code too, I guess. Tint There we are. Yeah, the margins stay the same. We want no padding because we want it to fill up the entire thing. And I believe that should have us good for now. Yes, except for we want to set the input text box to vertically align fill to fill that entire thing. It gets rid of the slightly rounded corners, I guess, but we're not going to worry too much about looks. I want to change this text color too, so I do want it to be very translucent, but I want it to be something, yeah, like black. I think would look better with maybe an opacity of like 0.66 or so, something like that roughly. I think that looks a lot better. And maybe going back to the original stock text. Yeah, that looks better. I like that. Cool. So that should be fine for now. We can save that and you'll see how that works on our main chat setup. So as the messages come in here, they'll go up. So if you missed that, all I did was I took the user created wchat in and I just dropped it into the size box. You can see I could add 2 like that. So that is that for now. Next up, we need the actual messages, what they will look like. So this will be the last one, I believe. So we'll go widget underscore chatbox message. Open that up, and again we're gonna go custom 768 by 32. See how that works out, and we can keep a canvas panel, but we want a size box, and in that size box we will want text. We'll be setting that text. Obviously that text needs to get changed majorly though. First of all, we need to, these details panels are getting to me, we need to change its name. Let's call it chat message text. And we want it to be a variable, so check that off. And we want its size way smaller. Let's go back to like 16 again. And let's vertically align it to the bottom. And we can leave everything else fine for now. We want it to auto wrap because we don't want it to accidentally get cut off if there's a bug. And then the size box, we need to play with that a little bit. Let's anchor it to all 4 corners of the canvas panel. And I'm just gonna do something like, this is a chat message to see what it will look like. So that obviously is not going to work like so, meaning this needs to be changed. Also the sizes. So 0, 0, 0, 0, there we go. Offset bottom 0. That is a lot better. We basically want it to fill the whole thing is what that is doing. And a height override, what do we use for this? Was it 64 we were gonna go for? Or 32. We could set a max height of 64 in case it was a double line message. So we'll see how that works out. We're going to try to prevent double lines, however. So we should be able to compile and save that now. So let's start with some of the blueprinting we'll need. So we want each player to be able to send a chat message. So if we're on Steam or whatever, we want, you know, player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4, whatever their names are, to be able to send chat messages. So let's create a new folder. Actually, you only have one of them, so we can just go straight to blueprint class, and we want player state. And you can see, obviously, player state is created for every player on a server and replicated to all clients. I haven't talked too much about player states yet in our networking series, but this is one example of a use for it. Now, it's prefixed as PS usually, so I'm going to call this PS chatbox tut. Why not? We're also going to need a game mode to set this, so we'll go GM chatbox tut, and let's open that up and go to its defaults, and let's set the player state to the one we just created, and compile and save it. And let's open up our player state then. So as you can see, a player state obviously replicates and is always relevant stock, which makes complete sense. Oh, I've got stock nodes on there. Anyways, so let's create an event dispatcher first of all, called received a chat message. And on there, we're going to use two variables that are going to be duplicated multiple times. Let's set them to text. We're going to have a message, not message, I guess, chat, because we have a message, chat sender, and chat message. So we can now call that event dispatcher, obviously, when we need to. So let's set up some custom events. So the first one is going to be broadcast chat message. And let's set its replication to run on the server. So you obviously a client would say, hey, I'm sending this chat message to the server, and the server would say, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this or whatever. We want it to be reliable. We don't want any chat messages to be missed. However, we could set that to unreliable if we were having performance issues. However, this shouldn't take up too much network bandwidth. Let's make a new input of type text called chat message in, and let's just duplicate that and paste it, and this one's going to be a multicast and reliable, and it's going to be exactly the same, except it's going to have, just like our dispatcher, a chat sender. You'll see executes on all, so this will be executed only by the server, so you could even use a switch has authority if you want it as a safeguard. It's only going to be executed on authority by the server, and then it's going to be executed first by the server, and then the server is going to tell everyone else to execute it. And what they're going to execute is simply our event dispatcher. So drag it in and call it, and obviously message in goes to chat message and sender goes to sender, just like so. Nice and clean. And so next up, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get the game state. Oops, that switch has authority. I am on the wrong set of keyboards. There we go. We want to get the game state. So that's similar to the player state, but it handles everything about the game, and we won't create our own game state yet. And off of that, we want to get player array. So this is every single player state in in the game, everybody who's connected basically. And off of that, we obviously want to do a for each loop. Hold down F and click to get a for each loop node, and we'll connect it up. So that'll be the receiving array. Let's reorder this a bit. I don't like it being there, but that's not very clean either. We'll go like that. Stick it back there. That'll work, and we'll bring this down. Give us some room to work. All right, so what we're gonna want to do in our loop is as a player array from the game state, we are gonna cast back to this class. It may look a little weird, but this loop is actually operating using the player state array. So we want a player state to cast into the player state class, which would make more sense once I get into more of the player state in terms of networking. And all we want to do is call this, I totally forgot to name it. This is we broadcast and we receive chat message. We didn't want to have it called copy. We just want to call that receive chat message. Like so, and that is going to be its target. And then we just need to plug and play, sort of. So the message is obviously chat message in. So I think I'm going to rewrite that up over here. And the chat sender is simply going to be right click player name. That is a stock variable from the player state, which will be either randomly generated if you're like on a local area network, or it might be a PC name, or if you're on Steam, it would be their Steam name. And so their name as a string, which as you can see is replicated, will be the sender. So that is that there. So let's just select it all, comment, handle, chat, message, broadcasting, and receiving. All right, so let's compile and save that. Should be good enough for now. Let's go to our chat main, since that is obviously going to be, well, the main part of it. And let's go to the graph, get rid of these stock nodes again. Let's start on the event graph, event construct. So when this is first created, let's create a branch. So we want to be able to turn it on and off on will, basically, from other blueprints. So let's create a variable called b is visible and make that editable, like I said, so that we can set it as a kind of configuration. And its default value will be fine as false. And then what we need to do is drag in our chat in widget, and we need to go over to it, to its graph, and create a Boolean variable 2 called b. Let's call it on chat close focus viewport. So basically, when you send a chat message or when you close the chat box, it will focus back on the viewport. However, we want to compile and set its default value to true. So with that compiled and saved, we can head back to chat main, and oh, I hate when it does that. We can go back and we can pull that out and set it. Come on, set B. There you are. So if it's not visible, however, we obviously don't want to, basically if we have it visible, we want it to not focus to the viewport. We want it to focus to our widget, our UI. Focus UI, set focus, like so. Next up, let's set up some fading and opacity changes. So let's select the scroll box that holds all the messages, and the color and opacity, the gradient that we set up, the color and opacity, where I set this accidentally before. We want to bind the color and opacity, so we'll create a binding. So I think that will be a totally fine function name for us. And so we want to make color. Is that what I wanted? Make linear color. Make linear color. I got ahead of myself there. We want it to be black, so red, green, blue 1, and we want to choose the alpha, however. So let's do a select float, so we can select in between 0 and 1. So A is going to be 0, and B, however, is going to be a pure function that creates a fade. So let's create a new function called create opacity fade, and we want this to be a pure function, and we want it to have an output of a float that is our opacity. And in this function, we want to do the same thing. We want to select float. We want A to be 1, and we want B to be a float interpolation, ease in out, so that will create the fading. We want A to be 1, B to be 0, an exponent of, say, 3, an alpha. So the actual opacity, we want to clamp float with a min of 0, a max of 1, so obviously between completely invisible and totally opaque. And that value, we want to do a little bit of math. First, we want to get game time in seconds, so that that gives you a over time kind of functionality. And let's create a couple of variables called last message received at, and that will be a float. Compile, give it a default value of like -500, just to make sure that it doesn't bug out. And we want to take this and we want to subtract, if I can remember which one is subtract, multiply, that's plus, minus, there we go. Subtract game time in seconds by that. Clean that up a bit. There we go. And then we want to divide a float by a float. And then we want another variable called fade out time, which will be a float. We want that to be editable, and let's pick a default value of something like 20. I don't know. That can be always edited later, and we'll plug that right in there. Set this up nice and clean as well. So that goes into the float value. We can bring that in there. Beautiful. And then B pick A, so to decide between fully opaque or the fade, we want an OR boolean. I have an OR somewhere. Let's type an OR. We want our widget chat in. We want, is it being focused? Is someone typing basically? So has any user focus? True or false? Or has any user focus descendants? So that would be any of its children. Or is our chat box visible? If any of these are true, then we pick A, which is totally opaque. Otherwise, we let it do its fade. So that is bound to there. So that is this function back here, which we can now continue working on. So that was going to be B. So get create opacity fade. We can bring that right in. I believe that needs to be a constant too. So let's set it as constant and go back. Yeah, there we go. Now it gets a target to self. Perfect. And we'll set that up like so. And B pick A, let's go the scroll box message container. So this holds all our messages. Get children count. So how many messages do we have? If it is less than or equal to 0, then we'll pick A, which will be completely transparent. So compile and save that. Now we can go ahead and we can select in the designer our chat input, the color and opacity. We can bind to that exact same function. Sorry, I'm always mixing these up. We'll clear that, remove binding. The foreground color we can set to that. And the color and opacity, we're going to create a binding. Get color and opacity 0. We will call this get chat in color and opacity. And I'm going to set it up like stock just so it's nice and even like so. And so we're going to do this, well, not the same thing, but a similar setup. Instead of creating a linear or making a linear color, we're going to select, and we're going to select between pure black and pure white. Actually, we can do pure white opacity 0 and set it to black just so we know the difference. That is totally translucent. Option 1 is totally opaque. So we need to pick between those for our chat messages. So let's bring in our index as an OR boolean. That'll change it to true or false. And we're basically going to do the same thing as before. Our chat input, you know, we can even just go back and copy it from our from what we created. So let's copy that and paste it right in. So So basically, if it's visible or if anything has focus true, then we allow it to have full opacity. Otherwise, we make it totally transparent. So compile and save. That is now bound. Now, being as this is our main chat setup, and this is a scroll box which holds children, we need some way to add children to that. So let's create a new function called add message container child. And if we select it, it is going to have our regular 2 inputs, text and text of sender and chat message. So the first thing we want to do is well, every time this is called, we obviously want to create a new message. So let's create widget, and that widget will be our actual message, so chat box message. And the owning player will be get owning player. Since it's networked, you see the little cosmetic icons there. So it'll be whoever owns it. And we need to create a few variables over there. So let's go to the chat message and go to its graph. So in the chat box message, we'll create a few variables. We need obviously a chat message, which will be a text variable, and we want that to be editable. And we want to expose on spawn is what I was looking for. And that should be good. So we'll just compile that quickly. I'm just going to save everything so we don't lose anything. So you see now that's exposed on spawn so that we can plug something into there once we get to that point. So what do we want to plug in as a message? Well, let's work backwards. We are going to be working from strings, so we want string to text. We need a lot more room here. Let's do an append node, and we want to append player's name, and then a colon with a space followed by their message. So we can plug the message right into C, like so. And we can plug their name right into the first part. Now, if we have people with ridiculously long names, we can chop their names here, but we'll get that in a later video, a little polished video maybe. So off of this, we can grab get chat message text, and we want to add child. We need to first get our message container. We want to add child with the content of that chat message text. Plug that into the create widget logic there. And then we want to take this, I'm going to create a rewrote node and another one, and then we want to scroll to end. So that brings us right to the very bottom. Very useful for chat boxes. Then we want to set the time the last message was received at, because this will be called every time we receive a message, as the current get game time in seconds. Simple. So we'll compile and save that. We can now call that at any time to add a chat message. So let's move on to our chat input, the actual ability to enter in input. So let's select our input text box where the user will actually be typing, and we want to add an event to on text committed. So that's basically when the user presses enter, or if there was a send, or when it loses focus. So let's throw a branch in, and it gives us some great little stock things to work off, like commit method. You can see if I do an equal to enum, we have default, on enter, on user moved focus, or on cleared. So we want on enter if the user pressed enter, and we'll do an and boolean. If the user pressed enter, and let's take our text, so whatever text they entered, we want to text trim preceding and trailing. So basically if they had a bunch of spaces or tabs at the beginning or end, that will remove any. And then we want to turn that into a string, and we want to get its length, len. So how many characters was it? If it was greater than 0 and the user pressed enter, then we can continue on. Working off of that, we can very quickly take the length. I'm going to just move that over, take the length. If it was greater or equal to, and we can limit it to a certain number of characters. So if we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Actually, we'll make a space 10. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can put about 100, and we can put about 100 characters in there currently. So let's say if it, although we can do double line messages, let's say if it's greater than 256. I was gonna say 128, but we can do double line messages because we set it to wrap. We want to take the chat message without any white space and to string. Then we want to lift. Source string is that. The count will depend on, basically we're gonna cut, if we're gonna cut their message off, we're gonna add something. So we want to append we could message too long. Well, that's quite long. Message or length exceeded. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 characters, 256 minus 19. So 237 is where we'll cut it off at. So we'll select two strings. So create a rewrote on the original with the white space cut off, and then we want to select string. And this one is going to be B, whereas our cutoff will be A, and B pick A will be if it was greater than or equal to 256 characters. Let's kind of clean this up a bit. Then we want to change that to text. And so if the user pressed enter and blah 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 blah, all that works out. If true, then we well, first let's get owning player. So who owns this chat box? And off of them we want to get player state. You can see that's a default replicated value. We don't need to create it. We want to cast to that player state, that one we just created, and we want to go off of it and message. Where is it? Broadcast a chat message. So we're telling the server that we got a chat message we want to send out there, and the message is this one right here, just like so. So let's clean this up a little bit. So if user pressed enter and had more than one character, or more than 0 characters, I guess you could say, this basically cuts messages off after 237 characters. We'll just say cards with ... length exceeded. And after this, what we want is to take our input text box, so the actual text that we are typing into, and set text. We want it to be blank because we'll basically be clearing it. So this will say broadcast a chat message to the server, replicated, and then set it back to blank. And we also need there's an on event lost focus. There's also events Y. So if the widget loses focus, so if the user clicks back into the game or whatever, we want to create a branch and go into there. And we also want the false to plug right into there, as well as the end of the true statement to go into this branch. In fact, we should bring this a little bit closer. I like it organized like that more. So it is simply set up that we use the same variable, basically on chat close focus to the viewport. So based on that condition, if true, then we set input mode game only. So we set the focus back to the viewport, and the target will be get owning player. Who owns this widget? So that should be that for the input. So we'll compile and save that. I'm going to save everything. So next we can move on to the actual chat box message, which is extremely simple. We already set the message, so that is good there. And so what we can do is we go back to the designer, and the chat message text we can bind to that property, the chat message, and we want to set its color and opacity as well. So create a binding. We'll give it some room there, and so this will be the opacity of the chat message. And so what we need to do is create a new variable called chatbox main. Could even do a W, and that will be of the type W underscore chat main reference, and we want that to be editable, and we want it to be exposed on spawn, and that should be fine just like that. Compile and save. So now we can drag that in, and we can get it. We can take that function right out of there. What the heck did I call it? I believe it's this one. And then we want to make slate color based on that into the return value. So that should be the one that basically, no, wrong one. We want a background image. So we'll go back, delete that, BG, chat background image color and opacity. There we go. So that depends on how many messages there are. So we can save that. And I think that is it. Compile and save. So now, actually it's getting pretty long, so I think we'll leave it off there, and on the next video we will set up the HUD and the main widget HUD and the actual HUD class and all the event bindings and all of the event dispatchers that we need to add chat messages. Not too hard to figure out on your own, but it's basically there. We just need to set up the actual logic to send the messages and to display them. So we will do that in the next video. So thanks for watching from the team here at UnrealTek, a division of BlenderTek.com. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please like it and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Or on social media, and the links on your screen. If you dislike this video for some reason, please tell us why so we can continually improve based on your community input. We also take requests, so we'll see you next time. And remember, create your way.